So I'm here today with Chris Murphy, who is the Global Head of Workforce Services at Boston Consulting Group. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Steve.
The topic today is empathy in IT, and I wanted to get your perspective as an IT leader, a seasoned IT leader, on how IT really interacts with end users and how IT understands end users. So the first question for me is, from your experience as an enterprise IT leader, how well is IT perceived by the end users and by the business?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I think in the industry, I think the perception of IT varies across a pretty big spectrum. But I think the organizations that perform the best don't leave it to chance, right? They put the user and user centricity at the core of their IT strategy, and they measure satisfaction so they understand how IT is perceived. So at BCG, user centricity is a key focus of our IT strategy. And due to that focus, we've seen a dramatic increase in IT satisfaction over the last few years. In fact, in 2020 alone, we're kind of proud to say that we've improved by 12%, such that 89% of our employees are actually satisfied with IT, which is a great percentage to land on. So kind of to achieve that kind of high level of satisfaction, then Steve, like we strive to kind of deeply understand and listen to our users. We let our employees prioritize our actions as well, and put them in the center of the design and the solution development. So even if you look at 2020, such a difficult year with COVID, so again, we quickly pivoted on our changing user needs because they constantly change.
Mm-hmm.
And we deployed things like kind of higher quality and more advanced remote working solutions, which became a huge priority, obviously, in 2020. So the good news, though, is that in a lot of cases, these plans weren't new. They were already on roadmaps because we understood the employees and we understood them pretty extensively, but they did get accelerated, I guess, right, as a result of COVID. So.
And specifically, what would you say are your do's and don'ts or the best practices you've seen in the enterprise around capturing understanding and taking action on that end user sentiment?
You kind of have to use a couple of techniques and feedback mechanisms. So one that you have to use is kind of quantitative research, right? So on the quantitative side, one of our key measures of success is the pulse check. So every quarter, we ask 5,000 employees for their input on how we're doing, and we get about a 23% response rate. So that's a pretty good representation of the voice of our employee base. But it's important to note as well that, when you invite feedback, you also have to respond to that feedback. Otherwise, people won't engage with the process kind of year on year. So we've had great results year on year. So we analyze the results of the pulse check. We communicate what we hear back to the 20,000 employees. Very important to close the loop, I think, in the process. And then we ask them to rank the priorities. So this is what we heard. This is what we think the priorities are based on what you said. Could you help us rank those priorities? And then we use that ranking then to drive our roadmaps in an iterative fashion. So the pulse check gives us insight then into kind of what is happening, I guess. But the qualitative feedback provides us insight into why it's happening, and that's as important. So here we use techniques like usability testing, kind of eye tracking. We use interviews, kind of focus groups to give us insight into the why behind the quantitative feedback we receive from the pulse surveys.
Yeah, it's great to get that insight into how a world-class IT operation manages that. One question going slightly different from the technical side of it is the role of empathy. Does empathy play a role in IT's interaction with end users, and is it possible to have empathy at enterprise scale?
My understanding of empathy is kind of the capacity to understand or feel what another person's experiencing from kind of within their context, right? So this is paramount. If you're really trying to service your user base, you have to deeply understand them, and you have to put yourself in their shoes. And when you put yourself in their shoes, I think you show empathy. We use text analytics to get insights into the comments from the employees, because there's huge insight you can get there as well, beyond the results, into the comments and how they're feeling in those comments. So that also helps us kind of drive, our roadmaps, I guess. We use we do a people survey every year. So then we correlate, our IT pulse check with our people survey, so that we're kind of listening more holistically as well, across the board, from the quantitative stuff that we have. But in addition to the quantitative research, we kind of spend a lot of time and effort kind of breaking down the 20,000 employees. It's kind of very hard to think about the 20,000 employees as a holistic group. So we break them into master personas. So these personas then are kind of archetypes that helps us kind of deeply understand, I guess, different archetypes within the organization. We understand their roles, we understand how they work, we understand what IT products and services they use in their work, we understand their friction points with IT, kind of understand the moments that matter for them as they use technology. So then we use these personas at an overarching level, and also product specific personas, because when you're actually designing a solution for a specific product, you might want to understand that product persona and the journey maps that go with that, and then use that in the design process as you solution IT. Empathy is hugely important in delivering enterprise IT.
And you've obviously got the results to prove it.
Yeah, it's a loop, I guess, right? So you need to understand what people's perception of IT is, not just at the overarching level, but by products, and break it down. Then you need to prioritize the work that you're going to do to address the opportunities. Then you need to put the users in the middle of the solution design, and then you actually go back and you measure again to see that, did that process work, or do you need to pivot?
So, Chris, in your opinion, is empathetic IT the future? And if so, why?
I think simply yes. I think kind of all IT efforts need to have the user at the center, so that they're solving the most important employee needs and employee problems. If you can truly understand the problem, you can only do it really if you understand your user. So you need to step into their shoes. You need to put the user then in the center of the solution. What I would say as well is that, how IT works as well is really important. And so at BCG IT, then we've pivoted kind of more to an agile kind of transformation, where we have a few things. We've got a user experience center of expertise. So we've got a small set of ITers in the center that do a number of things. They provide best practices and guidance back out into the agile squads and the tribes. They also kind of set up agile works so that we do it at scale. So we've got kind of a research system, we've got a design system, so that we can reuse all of these components back out into the 70 squads and tribes that we have in the distributed teams. So that's important. But secondly, then we're leveraging agile techniques. So, if you leverage agile techniques, you're putting the user in the center, you're getting them to prioritize your backlog. You're also putting them in the middle of the design process, so that you're delivering IT to the business based on what they need.
Fantastic, and so impressive, Chris. Well, thank you very much for sharing your insight and your experience, and even some, I suppose, top best practices from what sounds like an extraordinary IT organization.
Yeah, look, I think, if I was to give advice to IT departments, in terms of enhancing their IT experience, number one, overarchingly, you kind of have to put user centricity first and foremost to make it a priority for the entire IT organization. So you kind of have to embed it into your IT strategy and into the culture of IT as well. And that takes time and effort and it's top down as well. So they need to see the signals like from leadership that this is important. But then if you break that down, Steve, I think there's like three major things that you need to do. So you obviously need to research your users, which we talked about. So put yourself in the shoes of the users, understand how they work. I think you need to measure employee satisfaction. So you need to know how satisfied they are with IT overall. But then you need to drill down. You need to drill down into satisfaction by service, by product, by geography, by persona. And then you need to get the employees to prioritize it. And then lastly, I'd say the third step is like put the users in the center then of the solutioning, so that the products and service are completely optimized for the employee experience. But the other thing then is like you need to incentivize the IT employees, right? So one thing we do every year is we have a user experience award ceremony. So we recognize things like the most improved product or the product gets the highest level of satisfaction, and we create a bit of a buzz around user centricity and the importance of that within the IT organization, so that we're signaling to the org that this is important, this is what we're rewarding, so keep doing more of that. So I think that's really powerful in terms of improving the empathy in IT and in terms of improving the user experience.
Amazing. Yeah, as they say, it takes a village to raise a child. So I guess it takes everybody to deliver better IT experiences.
Indeed.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Chris.
All right. Thanks, Steve.